Hey guys, this is the second part of service chemistry lecture. In the first part we saw adsorption and as it applies to catalysis and the types of catalysis and the mechanism for catalysis. Here we are going to see the colloidal state or briefly colloids. What are they? So when you take a mixture in chemistry, okay, A and B or A plus B plus C, whatever it may be, normally what we see is the best example of mixture is solutions chapter, solute and solvent. When you mix them together, let's say you take sugar and water, you mix them, it's completely mixed. Okay, that's what is called a true solution. Salt and water, sugar and water, all those. Whereas when you take, for example, sand, okay, you take sand and then you mix vigorously and then you see it, that's your suspension. Over a period of time, it slowly settles down, okay, and let it sit long enough, you see the clear supernatant solution on the top and the sediment in the bottom. In between these two exist mixtures that are called colloids where the solute that is dissolved in the solvent is about 1 to 1000 nanometer in size. So literally it's a suspension with the solute very small in size, so it doesn't settle down. Example, milk. Milk is a colloid. Okay. So here is a brief example. The true solution is something where you cannot actually have your solute molecules clustered together. All the solute molecules are separated by the solvent. Okay, solvation, because of solvation. Whereas precipitation is where they precipitate in the bottom, corresponding KSP, everything will be there. A suspension is something where even if you give time, just like precipitation, if you give enough time, it doesn't get settled down. For example, milk is something, it might go bad, but it doesn't settle down. Okay? Here in colloids, you want to remember two different things. Dispersion medium is basically a solvent, and the dispersed phase, what is being dispersed into the solvent is the dispersed phase, that's your solute. Okay, pretty much like NaCl water means NaCl would be the dispersed phase, water would be the dispersion medium, but NaCl water belongs to true solution, just an example. Okay, so you want to remember this number 1 to 1000 nanometers. There are 8 types of colloidal system depending on what is your dispersed phase and what's your dispersed medium. So extremely simple. If you have 3 states of matter, there are 5 states of matter. Okay, solid, liquid, gas, and then your plasma and Bose-Einstein condensate. But we study only solid, liquid, and gas. So just use a combination of them. Okay. Now if you were to write it down, pretty simple. Oops, there we go. Okay, I have solid, liquid and gas, solid, liquid and gas. Let's say dispersion phase, dispersion medium. Okay, solid dissolved in solid, solid dissolved in liquid, solid dissolved in gas. That makes it 3. Liquid in these 3 makes it 3, and gas in these 2 makes it 2. I don't consider gas and gas because gas and gas is homogeneous. Okay, they'll completely mix. They'll be close to what is called a true solution. Okay, so there's only 8 of them, and unfortunately you may have to remember these names. Okay, you want to remember these names. Okay, because they may ask you this belongs to what, or a solid sol is based on what, they might ask you. Okay, the things that are extremely important for you I have highlighted here. Milk you want to remember, fog you want to remember, froth you want to remember. What's your dispersion phase, what's your dispersion medium. Milk is extremely important, liquid in liquid, and it's also called emulsion. Paints, for example, could be an emulsion paint as well. Correct? Solid in solid is also simple. Your gemstones, different colored, ruby, all those, you get colored. For example, diamond. Okay, diamond is pure. You can take it as solvent, pure dispersion phase. Sorry, pure dispersion medium, diamond, colorless. Okay, but the diamond can be blue diamond, meaning a small amount of impurity is there. So it is a solid impurity in solid, so that will become an example of a solid sol. Okay, right. So you want to remember just at least the highlighted one, not all of them, at least the highlighted one. Foam is easy to remember. You see foam in every day. Froth is pretty simple. Let's say, for example, You take a liquid, okay, for example egg, you keep beating it, okay, you keep beating it for omelette or whatever it may be, it froths on the top. Let's say you put little bit of water in there and you keep beating it, the gas goes in and forms the froth. Okay, basically gas in liquid, the gas goes away, the froth goes away. Another best example would be, for example, just take a chocolate milk bottle, keep shaking it very very hard, you see the foam on the top, you let it sit for some time, the gas goes away and you get only the pure dispersion medium. Right, you can classify the colloids into types based on what category you are going to classify them, what is the criteria you are going to use. Okay, if you take the criteria as the attraction between dispersed phase and dispersed medium, you get two types. Okay, hydrophilic or lyophilic. Lyo means solvent, something that loves the solvent. Okay, those are called lyophilic colloids. Lyophobic means something that doesn't like. Hydrophobic, hydro basically means when the lyo solvent becomes water. Okay. What is mean by reversible and irreversible salts? See, these love the dispersed medium so much, the dispersed phase loves the dispersion medium. So the dispersed phase, dispersed medium, okay, that's more than enough, I guess. So the love for that is so much that, let's say for example you dry it out, the dispersion medium evaporates completely. It loves it so much that when I add the dispersion medium again, it goes into it again and gives you a colloid. Whereas lyophobic is not that easy. Once you separate the dispersed phase from dispersed medium, you cannot make it go back until you do separate techniques. Hence it's called irreversible. I cannot reverse the process. Okay. This is one type of classification. The other type is when here I am trying to figure out the interaction between dispersed phase and dispersed medium. In this type of classification, basically the dispersed medium is not taken into account. The dispersed phase, what is the size of that colloid? Okay, multimolecular colloid like gold, colloid and sulfur about this size. Macromolecular is when it is extremely big. You want to remember the macromolecular examples: nylon, your rubber, all of them are colloids. Okay, they are extremely big dispersed phase. Something in between, that is called associated micelle. This is the most important one for your syllabus. Okay. An associated colloid is also called a micelle. It's nothing but a something that behaves as a normal strong electrolyte at low concentration. Take an example, let's say sodium chloride. That's not an associated micelle, just for visualization. Take sodium chloride or something like sodium chloride. Okay, something like this. When you take low concentration, it wants to keep away by itself. Okay, it is completely happy. It's a strong electrolyte, completely dissolved. When there is more of them, they combine to form what is called a micelle. This is a micelle right there. They join together. So just like that, you don't go there. You have to cross a certain concentration. Until that concentration is crossed, it's going to be strong electrolyte. It is colloidal at a higher concentration due to formation of aggregates. They come together and form an aggregate. Okay. This takes place above a certain temperature only, called a Kraft temperature. You don't have to know more than that. A Kraft temperature is the temperature above which micelle can form. Okay. It above a critical micelle concentration. So this is a strong electrolyte. This becomes a micelle. Let's say for example I have very low concentration, it allows to be a strong electrolyte. I cross a certain concentration, the barrier is called a critical micelle concentration. Only above that you form this. Okay. On dilution, the colloids become individual ions. Dilution is I am adding water. So what happens with dilution? Concentration goes down. So I have not crossed the concentration barrier. Okay. Now what is it used for? Just this is your micelle that is used to remove oil or dirt. Very good example is soap. When you take soap molecules, you take very low amount of soap molecules, extremely low. They are ions, they are strong electrolytes. When you put it in water, they form micelle and they end up removing your oil and dirt. That tells you that you want to make sure for a given amount of water, you need to add a minimum amount of soap below which cleansing action will not take place. Why? You add very little soap, you have not crossed the critical micelle concentration. Okay? If you have not crossed the concentration, then you cannot form the micelle. If you cannot form the micelle, you cannot remove the dirt. Okay? Takes place above a certain craft temperature. Okay? Hence you can use hot water for washing. The example that you have in your syllabus for micelle is soaps. Okay? The critical micelle concentration is somewhere between 10 to the power minus 4 to minus 3. So just remember this way. No need to remember this. Around millimolar to millimolar, 0.1 to 1 millimolar. Okay. Soaps are nothing but long chain fatty acids. Okay. So you have a long chain of alkyl group attached to COO minus. Okay. These COO minus, they are soluble in water, whereas this is hydrophobic tail. So the tails are hydrophobic, they don't love water because they are alkanes. This is COO minus, they love water. So the alkanes love the oil or the dirt, this loves water, so the soap is dissolved in water. Okay, I dissolve the soap in water because of this part, and this attracts the dirt and then removes the dirt. Okay. Common soaps are sodium stearate. Stearate is long chain fatty acid with 17 carbons. You can also do laurate soaps. Okay, laurate soaps are common in India. Laurate comes from coconuts. So laurate comes from coconut oils. Okay, extremely good. So in this slide, it's extremely important. It has come few times in NEET. You want to remember what is a critical micelle concentration, what is a Kraft temperature, okay, and also the concept behind micelle, and also about soaps. How do you prepare these colloids? Okay, you can do chemical methods. It's a given equation. Chemical methods have no merit in terms of understanding fundamentals. This particular chemical methods, sulfide salts are prepared this way, and also remember gold salt can be prepared by chemical method. Bredik's arc method is when you have the dispersed phase and dispersed medium. Okay, dispersed phase plus dispersed medium. You put some current in there. Okay, this, what happens is the passage of current makes the small molecules become aggregates. Okay, and then they become a colloid. Peptization, this has come in peptization. A freshly prepared precipitate, okay, you have precipitated, for example AgCl, it can be converted into colloidal salt by shaking it with a dispersion medium in presence of a small amount of electrolyte. So basically, you take for example a precipitate and dispersion medium, you shake them, it's going to go only a little bit inside, that's because of KSP. Even what is going to go inside is not a colloid, it's actually ions. Remember AgCl, Ag plus and Cl minus concentration we have figured out so many times, square root of KSP, all those are ions, those are not colloids. So what I want is, I want these to group together so they form the colloid. So for that what I do is, I add a small amount of electrolyte which makes these ions cluster together, and that electrolyte is called a peptizing agent. Okay, that's called a peptization, basically making a precipitate go into a colloid. Gold number has come once or twice in NEET and JEE mains, has stopped coming nowadays. It's the minimum amount of protective colloid which prevents the coagulation of 10 ml of gold salt when 1 ml of NaCl is added. This, it's easier to understand it pictorially. Let's say for example you have 10 ml of gold salt. Okay, I'm going to add 1 ml of 10% NaCl solution. Alright, so now what happens is, You add too much of this electrolyte, the salt precipitates out. Okay, I add this electrolyte, the salt precipitates out. I want to prevent this precipitation. Okay, then what I do is I can add something. Okay, I can add something so it will make this process stop. So how much of it is you're going to add in milligrams, that you want to remember. So milligrams of what you're going to add to this 100 mils, 10 mils of gold solution, so that it prevents precipitation when 1 mil of 10% NaCl solution is added. Okay, that's called the gold number. It is always in milligrams. Okay, now that you have prepared a colloid, how do you purify it? Obviously, for example, if you go to the previous slide, you are adding an electrolyte, correct? But what if that electrolyte is there and that's an impurity? What do? The first thing you can do is dialysis. Dialysis, just like what you know from real life, when kidney fails, you do dialysis. Dialysis is a combination of this process in chemistry and ultrafiltration. Okay, so let's say for example you have a bath and you have your colloid plus impurity. Okay, and this is a diffusible membrane. Okay, like in a semi-permeable membrane, this is a diffusible membrane. Colloids are bigger, correct? Colloidal particles are bigger than ions. So when I pass water through that and water comes out, it washes out the excess ions. Okay, it keeps washing out the ions so that it keeps removing, and that's basically a dialysis. Blood's a system of colloid. I can remove the excess ions that I have to be removed. The kidney is not doing it. So what you can do is you can basically wash it out so that the excess salts are taken out. That is your dialysis. Electrodialysis is nothing but, if this is not happening faster, I can do using electrodes. So what happens is basically current is being passed, the electrolytes that has to be removed will migrate to the corresponding electrode. So it's much faster. The next is ultrafiltration. Now take a filter paper for example. Filter paper, if you see under the microscope, you're going to see grids. This is a filter paper. Then this is a colloid. Now, according to my diagram, you see that the colloid can pass through the filter paper. So filter paper is not useful. But what we can do is take a filter paper, soak it with colloidal solution. I've given you what is colloidal solution here. Soak it with colloidal solution and dry it. What happens is the colloidal solution impregnates it and the holes have become much smaller. So now the holes are smaller than the colloid particles but larger than your impurities. So when I put it here, it gets trapped here, okay, and the impurities get washed out. Now I can dry the paper, take the colloid, put it back with dispersion medium and form my pure colloid. So basically dispersion phase plus dispersion medium plus impurity, you put it in the paper, what you get is dispersed phase, the colloids, okay, separate, and dispersion medium and impurities. Now I can put this back in dispersed medium and get the colloidal solution back. These are the ways that you can purify a colloid. Okay. Now we saw preparation of colloid, purification of colloid. Now properties of colloidal solution. First is Tyndall effect, very simple. When you put light through a solution, okay, when you go and stand on the other side, you can see the light coming out. But when you look at it at a 90-degree angle, you see no light coming out. Okay. Whereas in colloidal solution and suspension, you will see it. That's because the light is bounced back on all directions by the small particles. This property will only work when the wavelength of the light is very close to the size of the colloidal particles. If you are too far away, then it won't work. Okay. So Tyndall effect is shown by colloidal solutions as well as suspensions. Similarly, Brownian movement. The colloidal particles, when you say, they don't just stand in one place, they keep moving in zigzag direction. That's called a Brownian movement. And obviously colloidal solutions can also have a property of being colored. Example are gemstones. This is solid in solid colloid. Gemstones, they have color. The other property that you can have is, what is the type of colloid? You can have positively charged sol or negatively charged sol based on the charge on the sol. So you can have basically the colloidal particles positively charged. Example, you want to remember this, hemoglobin. That's a positively charged sol. Basic dyes, unhydrated metal oxides. Negative sol is metal. See, metal oxides are positive, metals are negative. You see that metals are usually M plus. Surrounding them will be the negatively charged. So metals, example, metallic sulfides as well. Okay. Also acidic dyes, basic dyes are positive, acidic dyes are negatively charged colloids. The other property is electrophoresis, meaning colloids being charged, they can move to opposite direction when they are subject to a electric field. And the other important property that you want to know, it's a statement question. Let's say for example, I have AgCl, NaCl. The I value is 2. For AgCl, I value is not equals to 2. We know that. Okay. Now, remember there are, like, let's say for example, lot of small molecules. Okay. These contribute to I value. What if they cluster together and form very few? They are exactly same small particles, but they cluster together. So this looks like something like this. Na gives you An. Association, right? Association gives you lower colligative properties. So I value less than 1 for colloids because of our association. Next we'll look into coagulation of lyophobic colloidal solutions. Coagulation is basically the opposite of peptization. In peptization, you make the, okay, maybe we can write it this way. In peptization, we made precipitate go into become colloidal particles. Here the colloidal particles go into precipitate. One we can do is electrophoresis. This is lyophobic, means they don't like the solvent. So they need some type of buffer to make them be in the solvent. Dispersed phase and dispersed medium, they need a buffer. Okay. So most of the time it is some type of electrolytes. The electrophoresis, okay, electrophoresis removes those electrolytes, right? So the dispersed phase settles down and precipitates. Persistent dialysis. So imagine that you keep doing dialysis and you keep removing the electrolytes. So what happens is you are left out with pure dispersed phase and dispersed medium. They don't like each other, so it precipitates out. Okay. The next we have is an important one, addition of electrolytes. So a little bit of electrolyte is good, too much of electrolyte is not good. What you do is, let's say for example, the colloid is negative colloid, negative sol. Okay. What if I had positive electrolyte? They'll have electrostatic interaction, they precipitate out. Similarly, a positive sol with a negative ions, what they do is they interact with each other, they precipitate out. Now, greater is the valency of the oppositively charged ion that is ordered, electrolyte is the greater the valency, obviously the stronger the interaction, Q1, Q2, correct? So the greater the valency, the stronger it is, the faster is the coagulation. Now based on that, what we can do, we can come into this type of behavior. So just looking at like Fajans rule, the greater the valency, 3 plus greater than 2 plus greater than plus, similarly 4 minus 3 minus 2 minus. Okay, so this is called Hardy-Schultz rule. Now when you look at it, it is actually self-explanatory. Hardy-Schultz rule basically is telling you the order in which given electrolytes precipitate out a lyophobic colloid. This has come in me before, just similar to Fajans rule. Okay, just no need to memorize, just know the higher charges precipitate out and a negative sol needs a positive electrolyte, a positive sol needs a negative electrolyte. Okay. Okay, I think this is reversed, is smaller m bigger m. The minimum millimolar concentration of electrolyte. Okay, this is supposed to be minimum millimolar concentration of electrolyte required to cause precipitation of a salt in 2 hours is called coagulating value. So the minimum millimolar concentration of aluminum 3 plus required to precipitate a given negative salt in 2 hours is called the coagulating value of this aluminum. Okay. So the smaller the quantity, the higher the coagulating power. Obviously, yes. So what is the minimum of aluminum I need compared to minimum of barium? Aluminum will be lower, right? Because lower amount itself will give you a high charge. So lower the millimolar required, smaller the quantity, higher the coagulating power. So for a same concentration, coagulating power will also follow the same Hardy-Schultz rule, right? Now we saw coagulation of lyophobic colloids. Now here is lyophilic, where the dispersed phase and dispersed medium like each other. Okay, they are already okay with each other. So what factors affect the stability of the lyophilic colloid? The charge and the solvation of the colloidal particles. Okay, the charge makes them attract each other, and the solvation of dispersed phase by the dispersed medium. What if we can affect these two? You will precipitate out the colloid. I can affect the charge by adding an external electrolyte, or affect the solvation by adding a suitable solvent. For example, I can add acetone or alcohol. They will combine with dispersed phase, for example, like water, because of hydrogen bonding. Okay, so it is going to precipitate out. The last segment of colloidal chemistry is emulsions. Emulsions are liquid and liquid colloids. Okay, extremely important. Few questions that come from this. Now, milk is a very good example of emulsion. Paints are also a very good example of emulsion. Yeah, there are two types of emulsion, liquid and liquid. The liquid can be, first liquid can be oil, dispersed medium is water. Okay, oil dispersed in water, dispersed medium is water. This is the solvent, dispersed phase is the solute. Whereas the other type is the opposite, water dispersed in oil, water is the less amount, so this will be the dispersed phase, the oil is the dispersed medium. Okay, now you want to remember the corresponding examples. Okay, so when you see butter, for example, extremely simple, butter is mostly calories, right? Mostly calories, so obviously it is the organic matter, oil, that is the dispersed medium in bulk. Very little amount of water, you keep heating the dispersed phase. Okay, water evaporates, basically you form ghee, right? Now because these are not going to like each other, okay, oil and water are not okay with each other, so these are lyophobic colloids, both of them lyophobic. In this case dispersed medium is water, so you can call it hydrophobic. Okay. So what you do is you add an emulsifying agent to stabilize it. A lot of products that if you see the label in the back, it will show that you have added emulsifying agent so that you can keep them together. Okay. This is the end of colloidal chemistry. So with these two lectures we have finished surface chemistry. Make sure this is a lecture where surface chemistry is not something you accumulate in one sitting. Couple of times you read it, automatically it will come out. The only thing that you have to revise closer to the exam is the examples. You might confuse them, so do it. Okay. Alright. Thank you guys.